It is 10 o'clock. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Jackson Williams. Vols men's basketball got back into the win column on Saturday with a comeback win over Vanderbilt in Knoxville by a score of 81-76. The Vols trailed by 16 at one point, but Zakai Ziegler's 22 second-half points lifted the Vols over the Commodores. Vols get a full week of rest before they hit the road to take on top 10-ranked Texas A&M this Saturday. Tennessee baseball back this weekend to begin their national title defense. They swept Hofstra in the three-game series by a combined score of 46-2. The Vols will take on UNC Asheville tomorrow afternoon in a midweek matchup. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, you need to visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Good morning. Welcome in. Hope everyone enjoyed their first post-Super Bowl Sunday, first Sunday of the NFL offseason. This is the Buck Rising Show. It is fueled, of course, by Hattie B's, the best hot chicken in Nashville. But with no Buck Rising today, he is off celebrating presidents. Buck Rising, big President's Day guy, was seen spotted strolling down Broadway about an hour ago wearing one of those old-timey presidential wigs. It's something he's very passionate about, so we'll give him the day, and he'll be back, unfortunately, tomorrow. I'm Lucas Panzica with you until 1 o'clock. Jackson Williams is on the other side of the glass. You can hop in and hang out with us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. 104.5 The Zone TV, where the break screen is very different. Jackson, you put together a little graphic here, I understand, right before the start of the show?
Joseph helped me with it, Joseph Bonanno, producer of 3HL. I got some notifications yesterday on Twitter that alleged you were a spelling bee champion, so I figured we'd celebrate it.
I was a spelling bee champion. I submitted the proof over the weekend from 8th grade, Our Lady of the Valley Middle School in the year 2009. So, maybe that's why.
8th grade in 2009?
All right, calm down. We got folks that were in 8th grade a lot longer ago than that, all right? Just because you're a fresh-faced baby here does not make me, I'm not over here with a walking cane. But maybe that's why Buck's not here today. He couldn't face the music. Just could not face the fact that I have the proof that I won a spelling bee. He does not, though he claims he does. Until there is proof, I will not recognize that claim. But we're not here to talk about that. There's actually a lot to talk about from the weekend. Pretty good sports weekend. I know people are bummed out that their Sundays with football are officially over after the Eagles Super Bowl win over the Chiefs, but loaded weekend. College hoops, massive Saturday. Vols beating Vanderbilt, big comeback in the second half at home. Auburn takes the 1 versus 2 matchup against Alabama on the road, holding off a Crimson Tide comeback. How about the Four Nations face-off and what's happening right now in this quote-unquote all-star break in the NHL? This is one of the best moves the NHL has ever made. Dropping the all-star game for the Four Nations face-off. We are getting meaningful international hockey for the first time in over a decade. USA-Canada was an electric factory on Saturday. Did you watch any of this game? Tell me you saw the opening puck drop and everything that followed in USA versus Canada Saturday night.
You mean the great fights?
Oh, my goodness. First 5 minutes of the broadcast from puck drop. USA and Canada just throwing haymakers. It felt like there was a decade of pent-up tension released into this game since that last meeting in the Olympics. NHL players obviously have not been able to participate in the Olympics since 2014. They will in the upcoming Winter Olympics, but not since then. And Four Nations face-off has given us that reward. So that was electric to watch on Saturday night. Meanwhile, the NBA All-Star Game falling flat on its face. Nobody that watched it seemed to enjoy it.
SNL 50 was much better.
It was much better. Daytona 500 was on last night, plenty on TV. But you and I were both watching SNL 50, no doubt. It was good. A significant lack of Bill Hader, who is my favorite Saturday Night Live character of all time. But otherwise, it was very well done. I love the way they honored the first cast from 1975. But it was a fun 3.5 hours of TV last night on NBC. But we're not here to talk about all of that. Where do we begin Tennessee 81, Vanderbilt 76. Food City Center at Thompson Bowling Arena, Saturday afternoon. Both teams badly needed this win. Tennessee is the one that comes out with it. Let's throw a cliche out there. A tale of two halves, right? This was a perfect description of that cliche. In the first half, Vanderbilt up 44-31 at the break. They were up by as much as 16. Out-rebounded Tennessee 21-10. Shooting 54.8% from the field was Vanderbilt. Tennessee 46.2% from the field in the first half. And Zakai Ziegler 0 for 2, 0 points in the first 20 minutes of this game. Then the second half, Tennessee 50, Vanderbilt 32. Tennessee out-rebounds Vanderbilt 20-10, doubling up the doors. Tennessee shoots over 65% from the floor. Vanderbilt shoots 35.7% from the floor. And Zakai Ziegler with the second half masterclass on Saturday, 7 of 9, 22 points, 4 assists. And this game turned on its head. Tennessee avoids a regular season sweep by the Commodores and gets a much needed win. Foul trouble played a huge part in this game. Jalen Carey was fantastic for Vanderbilt before he fouled out before the U4 break. He had a season-high 18 points, 7 rebounds. He tied a season high, certainly would have broken it if he had stayed in the game. And then Devin McLaughlin fouling out late as well. Jason Edwards almost single-handedly kept Vandy in it with just lights-out shooting. But Tennessee is able to crawl out of a first-half hole where they looked lethargic. They looked like they were not ready to play. It was the worst Tennessee has looked. I'm willing to say the worst Tennessee has looked all season long.
Oh, definitely. 100%.
Yeah, the Florida game has just popped into my mind as I say that. But I don't know, though. Look, Tennessee dropped a dud in the Florida game. Second game of SEC play, first road trip in conference play. And it was one of those nights. But given the circumstances, the rivalry, and being at home, I'm willing to say Tennessee looked worse in the first half, just getting dominated by a Vanderbilt team that I don't want to take anything away from. Mark Byington has done an amazing job. Mark Byington, the first-year Vanderbilt head coach. But we understand Florida's a national championship contender. Tennessee went down to Florida in January and just got punked. Got punked against a team that currently is a number 1 seed if the season ended today and the NCAA tournament started tomorrow. But Tennessee showing up in the first half like that at home against Vanderbilt, a team they had already lost to me was the worst 20-minute performance of the season. They turned it around. Rick Barnes spoke after the game about what went into Zakai Ziegler's turnaround specifically. Obviously, that's what drove Tennessee to this win. This was Barnes after the game.
I thought he got back to playing with a real chip on his shoulder. That's what I thought. I thought he got back and his competitive spirit really showed up. That's what I thought, because the first half he was getting driven by the things that he doesn't normally do, and I thought that was it. I thought the guy that we've always known, that's who he was in the second half, knowing that everyone, people game plan for him, but he was just determined. He's strong with the ball. He got mad at me probably because I said some things to him I don't normally say, but to challenge him a little bit. And I thought he responded well because I've seen him do it, but I thought that's who he is and that's who he needs to be.
We kind of saw a version of this Tennessee team in the second half that we haven't seen that often, not just this season, Jackson, but in the Rick Barnes era as a whole. Tennessee played angry in this game.
Oh, yeah.
Tennessee played with some attitude in the second half. I mean, the thing that kind of sparked the comeback, one of Zakai Ziegler's first actions of the second half was throwing a basketball at Jalen Carey's chest and getting teed up. And that was kind of the mentality that they came out with. Felix Okpara wasn't taking anything in the second half, and Tennessee turns this game around. So that's the upside, right? I saw Slay, who was doing SEC Network work, studio work on Saturday, tweet, as Tennessee went into halftime down 13 to Vanderbilt, we're going to find out a lot about what the rest of the season is going to look like for Tennessee. The second half is going to tell us a lot. Slay said that at the break, and he's right. And Tennessee came out, and they righted that wrong, and they ended up getting the win. But I feel like we saw the floor and the ceiling of this Tennessee team on full display on Saturday. The first half against Vanderbilt was the worst version of this team. If that team shows up at the NCAA tournament, getting dominated on the boards, giving up second chance points, struggling to close out shooters. Tennessee didn't, they weren't awful from a shooting perspective in the first half. They were over 46% from the floor. Tennessee has had performances this year against Kentucky where they didn't necessarily play overwhelmingly poor. They just couldn't buy a three-pointer, couldn't drill open shots. But the totality of the performance in both of those Kentucky games, I don't think was dreadful. I mean, they were in both of those games. But this Tennessee team from the first half against Vanderbilt was shooting the ball okay, but was getting beaten every other phase of the game. Struggling to close out shooters from three. Just uncharacteristic things that we're not used to, especially defensively, from a Tennessee team under Rick Barnes. That team does not make it to the second weekend in March. That team maybe wins one game in the NCAA tournament, if that's the version of Tennessee basketball that shows up in March. On the other hand, that second half team, that's the ceiling for Tennessee. 50 points in the second half. Reminded me of the 57-point second half they had the other week against Missouri in a ranked win at home. That team can make a deep run. So I'm torn, Jackson. I'm a little bit torn between being confident and excited about the way Tennessee turned that game around, the version of Zakai Ziegler that we saw that Tennessee needs down the stretch this season, and being excited about that, but also just confused. Confused at which Tennessee team we're going to get on any given night.
Yeah, I think consistency is going to be the key, which is, I feel like a cliche, but it's true with this Tennessee team. You're going to need that second half performance the rest of the way, because Tennessee has a tough end of the season schedule. Top 10 Texas A&M this weekend. You got Alabama still on the schedule. You need to see more of the second half team.
Yeah.
Also, would love to have been a fly on the wall for the halftime powwow.
No doubt. Again, Rick Barnes, I mean, you just heard him. He said some things to Zakai Ziegler that might have Zakai a little mad at him after the game. And it worked. Tennessee turned it around. But which Tennessee team will we get? I felt like we saw both extremes on Saturday afternoon. Meanwhile, Vanderbilt has to go to Kentucky on Wednesday. Tennessee does not have a midweek game this week. It's a great week for the Vols to be able to take a step back and reset for that road trip to Texas A&M on Saturday. Vanderbilt goes to number 15 Kentucky Wednesday night. Obviously, they beat Kentucky a couple weeks ago at home with a 5-point victory. So that'd be a pretty nice signature sweep, regular season sweep for Mark Byington if the Commodores can pull off that win. It doesn't get much easier for them down the stretch with Kentucky on the road, Ole Miss at home, and A&M on the road in their next 4 ranked matchups to come for Vanderbilt, who needs to put together some quality wins in order to put together their NCAA tournament case. Speaking of Vanderbilt, we would be remiss not to mention, once again, Vanderbilt freshman Michaela Blakes on the women's side. Unbelievable yesterday. 55 points, a Division I freshman record, men's or women's, by Michaela Blakes against Auburn in the 98-88 overtime win over the Tigers. We talked about her the other week when she was able to hang 53 at Florida. She's doing all this on the road. 55 points down in the Plains at Auburn. Michaela Blakes is one of the most exciting freshmen in the country, men's or women's, and she is helping power this Shea Ralph Vanderbilt women's basketball team. So a hat tip to her for another incredible performance. Some great college hoops over the weekend. Auburn knocking off Alabama on the road. Bruce Pearl officially becomes the first men's college basketball coach in history to win 2 1-versus-2 matchups. The first being obviously the win by Tennessee over Memphis back in 2008 at FedEx Forum. Pearl has done it on the road twice, winning those 1-versus-2 matchups. Auburn holding off an Alabama comeback. Fun day of college hoops on Saturday. This weekend, Nashville Soccer Club kicks off the 2025 season Saturday at Geodis Park against New England Revolution, and Nashville SC manager BJ Callahan joins us coming up next on 104.5 The Zone. A new season starts in Nashville Saturday night at Geodis Park. Nashville Soccer Club kicks off 2025 at home against New England Revolution. We will have it for you right here on 104.5 The Zone. Can't wait to get it started and can't wait to talk to Nashville manager BJ Callahan, who joins us now on 104.5 The Zone. BJ, first of all, thank you for taking the time. I know it's busy, the start of a match week, first one of the season. Appreciate you coming on to discuss it a little bit with us.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Really look forward to getting the season started. And, it's been a long time with the preseason, so nice to be back in Nashville, and now you can feel the energy.
And here you are entering your first full season as Nashville's manager. The dynamics got to feel pretty different, right? From coming in during the summer last year and getting to take over this team for the final 9-game stretch of the MLS regular season. I just have to feel like you, with a preseason under your belt, BJ, an offseason of roster moves, maybe your feet are under you a little bit more going into this one as opposed to being sort of thrown into the fire last year.
Of course, last year I think that, we were trying to manage sort of short-term goals with long-term goals. There's a bit of a transition that was occurring in the club, but at the same time we wanted to give our best effort there in the last 9 games. So now through the off season, as you've seen, we've been able to sort of replenish and reposition this roster. There's a lot of new faces, not only on the field, but there's a lot of new faces off the field inside the club. So certainly a transition period, but a lot of renewed energy and good positive energy.
I definitely want to talk about some of those faces that you bring in to mix in with some familiar faces that NSC fans will certainly recognize this weekend. But before that, just how beneficial do you feel like that stretch was? Just kind of trying to meet those short-term goals as you then made the transition into the offseason. How much did that 9-game stretch last year inform the way you and Mike Jacobs and this club went about replenishing this roster?
Yeah, it gave us a great opportunity to start working with one another, and not only just working with each other kind of in the office, but being able to see it on the field, see how we want to train, see how we want to play, sort of set the standards and the expectations throughout the building and on the training field, and ultimately on Geodis on Saturday nights. So I think it gave us a bit of a head start. So that way, when the off season occurred, we were able to, really hit the ground running with great clarity about what we, the player profiles we wanted to look at, and how we wanted to sort of manage our day-to-day operations. And so, it was you never want to miss the playoffs. That's but you have to sort of look at what opportunities come from that. And, that little bit of a head start, I think, has given us an advantage moving into 2025.
Nashville SC manager BJ Callahan with us ahead of Saturday's opener against New England. So people will show up to Geodis Park on Saturday, BJ, or turn it on Apple TV, and obviously see tons of familiar faces, Mukhtar, Zimmerman, Schaffelberg, players that will continue to be foundational pieces for you. But you've added so many players at critical positions. Looking at the midfield alone, bringing in an Eddie Tagseth from Norway, last season's MLS Cup MVP, and Gaston Brugman in the trade with LA Galaxy, among others. I remember talking to you at the start of the preseason about just toying with all of those possible combinations with so many new faces, moving magnets before you actually got a chance to work with these players. What has that process been like, getting to actually integrate multiple guys who come in from different backgrounds at key positions and just trying to establish those connections ahead of Saturday?
Yeah, so I think, Lucas, the way you say it is we brought a lot of new players in. We've built on a lot of what was good here in the club as well. We're trying to merge those two things, and that was what the preseason was about. But it's all built on the foundation of, the way we want to go about our business, the way we want to play as a representative of this city. So each player that we go out and we recruit, they understand what's expected of them. And now it's about building those relationships so that on Saturday night, when the fans get to see a team, it's a team that's representative of themselves.
I thought it was interesting in your press conference to open up the preseason. You mentioned the target of 50 goals in 2025, 50 goals to put Nashville in a position to contend in the MLS Cup playoffs. How would you describe the play style, the identity that Nashville fans can expect from the team this season along the way, on the way to trying to accomplish that goal?
Yeah, that's sort of what, scoring the goal is the end product of a lot of part of our process. But we look at everything through a lens, whether it's with the ball or without the ball, and how we're going to create goal scoring opportunities. So I think the fans can expect, a team that's going to attack, a team that's going to want the ball, and a team that wants to create, optimal goal scoring chances. And at the end, at the end of the day, hopefully giving them a few things to celebrate and cheer for, but it's a team that's going to attack the goal. And we know that we need to score. That's what this league is about. That's what this league is built on. If you want to compete with the elite of this league, and that's our objective. Our objective, as Nashville 2.0, is to build a sustainable model that can compete against, some of the best in MLS.
Hany Mukhtar in 2024 had 8 goals, 10 assists. So that ended a 3-year stretch where Hany had 15 or more goals, 11 or more assists in all 3 seasons. Never been done before in MLS history. But he spoke a couple weeks ago after one of your training camp practices just about using the offseason to reflect on his last year. Said he wasn't necessarily happy with his performance. What has Hany's preseason been like relative to the role that you're asking him to play, as he clearly is looking to get back into that MVP form that he was in for 3 straight years?
Yeah, I mean, Hany's a consummate pro. So, he's one of the most competitive people. And I wouldn't say just outwardly competitive, but he's competitive against himself, where he sets really ambitious targets on what he wants to accomplish each season. And, as he said, and as we know, he was disappointed with, the performance that he put in 2024. But he's only, I would say, re-energized, reinvigorated, more motivated, and has really taken some time to reflect, on some different things that, that he can do. And now that he's working inside a new sort of philosophy, how he fits in there. He's been working tremendously hard, not only at his own game, but also being a leader and a connector within the group. And again, we expect him to come back and have a really positive 2025.
Nashville manager BJ Callahan with us on the Zone. Obviously, you had already worked with Walker Zimmerman from your time as part of the U.S. men's national team coaching staff. How beneficial has that pre-existing relationship been with Walker as you come to Nashville and try to establish this team's identity with Walker as this team's captain?
Yeah, I think, having a previous relationship with Walker, I think he understood the values and the standards and that we were going to bring into Nashville. He's a big part of our team culture. He's a culture glue type of guy. And so, I think when you have, when you're able to create those connections, and then you have someone like Walker who's able to connect everybody into a common goal and something that's, a goal that's bigger than themselves. It's a powerful thing and can move a team forward in a quick manner.
I think it's interesting, BJ, just the perspective that you were working from under Greg Berhalter with the U.S. men's national team staff. Obviously, you had worked in Major League Soccer as part of the Philadelphia Union coaching staff prior to that. But how different are those vantage points from being on the U.S. men's national team staff, where obviously your concern is players with American nationality that are playing globally, right? Every corner of the world, with a heavy emphasis on MLS. But as you have gotten back into the full throes of being an MLS coach, what have you kind of learned in the last few months just about how much this league has grown in the last 5 years alone?
Yeah, so I actually look at the time that I had with the national team as a great advantage of now coming back into the MLS. I kind of, you use history as sort of the shock absorbers on how you want to make decisions further. So knowing where the league was when I left it in the end of 2018, being able to go to the national team and really see the game from a global perspective. Obviously, we have American players playing all over the world, some playing at some of the best clubs in the world. So it gave you a really good perspective. You're preparing against teams from South America, Central America, Europe, and each week you're scouting those players. And then what ultimately ends up happening is when you get back into the MLS, it's grown so much. It's become so diverse, one of the most diverse leagues in the world. A lot of those players that you used to watch playing against some of the men's national team players are now entering the league. And so, I think that's it's a testament to where the league is going, on how it's growing, how it's like I said, one of the most diverse leagues in the world, but also from an infrastructure standpoint, a tactical standpoint, where, it's you've seen accelerated growth. And I think it's prepared, the national team time has prepared me to step back into this, back into the MLS where, in this period of growth, and really lend some of the experiences that I've had to Nashville.
So for those who don't know, you obviously have a ton of background in the Philadelphia area, not just from your time coaching with Philadelphia Union, but about 2 decades, right? From playing in the college ranks to coaching in the college ranks to cracking that Union staff under Jim Curtin. What has it been like, BJ, to watch the Eagles Super Bowl celebration from afar as you get ready for the Nashville season?
Yeah, listen, as a person who spent many, many years in Philadelphia and even in South Jersey, growing up as a Philadelphia Eagles fan, you get those chills as if you're, like being a fan. It's just, you can see how it brings everybody together, the text messages, the group chats, it just is truly a way to connect, all of us that kind of, that you grow up with and have kind of moved around. So that's what sport does. And the Eagles were able to do that. And then you also can look at it from a different lens on just how strategic their roster build is and how selfless some of the players are to be able to make a competitive team. And some of the setbacks that they had, in a couple previous years where they don't win or they don't advance, and using that as motivation. So it's really, I think it's in its totality. There's a lot of great takeaways as to what it takes to be an elite, I would say, not only an elite team, but an elite franchise.
I was going to ask, what do you take from that in terms of just trying to relate to exactly that? A setback, Nashville Soccer Club misses the MLS playoffs for the first time in club history in 2024, and now trying to sort of reset and launch into this new era of Nashville SC 2.0.
Yeah, I think what you see is that there's a group of, you're trying to build a group of players that are bonded behind a mission that's greater than themselves. And individual success comes on the shoulders of other people, and really embodying that. And that's the type of team that we want to be. We want to be a selfless team, a team that has lots of people contributing. And I think when you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, you see that, right? You have a quarterback who makes great contributions. You have wide receivers that make great contributions. You have a running back that makes great contributions. But at the end of the day, I don't think anybody's going to argue that defensive line was the team that won, was the group and the unit that, really propelled them to win the Super Bowl. So a true team effort, and you want to those are the takeaways that you want as you kind of embark on a new thing, is understanding that it's the team is what's going to have success, and individual success will follow.
I know you come from a family of coaches, but what was your sporting background mostly like growing up from a playing perspective in the Northeast? Was it always soccer? Did that emerge as the focus later on?
Yeah, so growing up, I think, I was probably your traditional kid who played soccer, basketball, and baseball. By the time I got to high school, basketball sort of faded. Still a sport that I like to play in a pickup fashion, but it was something that I quickly realized it was not going to pursue any further, and focused on baseball and baseball and soccer. And then, as you kind of become more specialized in certain things, as you get up higher levels, the time commitments continue, and then obviously chose soccer to go to college and play.
And playing the goalkeeper position. Do you ever like to get involved, BJ? Are you one of those coaches that likes to kind of, especially at the position that you played with the keepers? Joe Willis been doing it a long time in Major League Soccer and for this club, but do you ever get involved with those guys on the training ground?
No, I don't. I try to stay back. I could probably learn more from Joe playing from goalkeeper than I can give to Joe from a goalkeeper. He's clearly a much better, more accomplished goalkeeper than I ever was. But, I just try to continue to support them, give them clarity on what we expect out of the position, on how it's connected to the team, how it's connected to the team game model. And then also why we try to hire a really good goalkeeping coach, Danny Sapero, to handle the details and manage the goalkeepers. He's another person who's been doing it a lot longer than me, and at that position was much better than I was at that position. So, I think the greatest strength is to know to step out of the way and let the experts do it, and just give them the framework of what we're looking for.
A 2025 opener on Saturday at Geodis Park. It's going to be cold. BJ, New England Revolution coming to town. What is the approach on an opening match day when New England obviously carries over a lot from last year's roster, same coach, but how much are you going back and looking at some of the things they did at the back end of last year, or is there a bit of a blindness to your opponent when you go into that opening match day where you kind of just have to keep the focus on yourself compared to maybe a July match day where you have a very good sample size of what you're going to get from your opponent?
Yeah, I mean, we will have tracked New England through their preseason and identify their new signings and some of the things that they're trying to do. But when you're going into game one, it's really about building on the positives that we've pulled from preseason. There's always a few things that you need to improve, but as we re-enter the Nashville market of being away for a while, get settled back into the training facility, and then obviously have the opportunity to compete. It's really just about being focused on us and the consistent messages that we've been emphasizing throughout preseason. We really just wanted to come alive when the lights turn on Saturday night and be that first step forward, to what we can hopefully make as 34 consistent performances throughout the season.
Opening whistle, 7:30 this weekend at Geodis Park, Nashville Soccer Club against New England Revolution. Looking forward to it, BJ. Best of luck throughout the course of the week. Getting ready for it. Really appreciate the time today.
Great. Thanks for having me, Lucas. Appreciate it.
That is BJ Callahan, Nashville Soccer Club manager, as he gets ready to start his first full season in charge of the Boys in Gold. We'll have it for you right here on 104.5 The Zone. Pregame coverage starts at 7, kickoff at 7:30, and you can also watch on Apple TV with the option to change your audio to the home radio broadcast. Hope you'll join us. A lot of exciting things, the play style, new signings throughout the course of the offseason as Nashville looks for a push for a trophy. That's the entire goal now for this club moving forward in what they have dubbed Nashville SC 2.0. Looking forward to getting it rolling. Appreciate BJ for taking some time. So Nashville Soccer Club's offseason is officially over, but the NFL offseason is just getting started. Which team is set to have the most interesting offseason in the NFL? And how do the Titans stack up? We'll talk about it next on 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back to the show. Fueled by Hattie B's, the best hot chicken in Nashville. Appreciate BJ Callahan giving us some time. Nashville Soccer Club kicking off the 2025 season Saturday night against New England. Can hear it right here on The Zone. 2024 was a tough year in this town. Right now, Nashville's best opportunity for a winner is Nashville Soccer Club in 2025. So look forward to seeing them launch their campaign Saturday night at Geodis Park. Also happening on Saturday, hope you'll join 104.5 The Zone at the Music City Polar Plunge this Saturday, February 22nd. Music City Polar Plunge is where participants take a chili dip to support Special Olympics Tennessee, helping provide year-round sports training, competitions, and inclusive programming for over 18,000 athletes with intellectual disabilities in Tennessee. For more info, visit 1045thezone.com/events. So the NFL offseason is underway. The Super Bowl is in the rear view, but the new league year does not officially begin until March 12th. NFL Scouting Combine is next week. By the way, we will have full coverage. Buck is heading up to Indy. We'll be holding it down here. He'll be doing various interviews and gathering information up there, as that is really where the offseason gets shaped, right? Is the Scouting Combine in Indianapolis, where conversations happen regarding trades, whether it be draft, players, free agency discussions take place. So as we kind of prepare ourselves for that, which team is set to have the most interesting offseason in the NFL? 615-737-1045 for you to jump in. Titans are up there just by nature. Any team with the number one overall pick, especially with the number of possibilities the Titans have in front of them. That is the fascinating thing about this draft for Tennessee. It's a unique situation. The vast majority of the time, if there's a team picking number one overall with a big need at the quarterback position, that team's going to take a quarterback. None of us can say with any degree of certainty that that's what's going to happen in late April in Green Bay when the draft begins. The only example that we have in recent years, the only comparison that I can draw to the situation the Titans have right now would be the Cleveland Browns back in 2017. Browns had the number one overall pick. Browns did not have a franchise quarterback, and they selected the best player in the NFL draft at that time in Myles Garrett. They ended up taking who they believed was the best player in the draft by consensus. He was the number one overall player in that draft. Now, that draft included Patrick Mahomes. That draft included Deshaun Watson. Yet the first quarterback taken off the board, as we know in that draft, was who, Jackson?
Mitch Trubisky.
Number 2 overall to the Chicago Bears. But the Browns went with the best player. This is a crazy thing to say because the Browns have been in quarterback hell for as long as any of us can remember. But do you think the Browns regret taking Myles Garrett with the number 1 overall pick in 2017?
No.
No. A generational player. The best defensive player in the NFL, especially since Aaron Donald decided to retire. He's in a tier of his own. There's probably no Myles Garrett in this draft, but the Browns, not having a quarterback in 2017, decided to take the best player, and it worked out for them in a draft that included Patrick Mahomes. Now, nobody was talking about Pat as the number 1 overall player at that time. The Chiefs had to move up to get him. The Chiefs fell in love with him. But he was considered a middle of the first round type of quarterback prospect. Nobody knew what would happen with Patrick Mahomes in his career. And the Browns had a quarterback at that time, right? It wasn't like the position was, they weren't completely devoid of talent. They thought they might have had something in DeShone Kizer at that time. Second round pick out of Notre Dame. It certainly wasn't a situation like the Titans have where, yes, Will Levis is under contract. He's in the quarterback room. He's the only quarterback under contract. Mason Rudolph set to be a free agent. But the Browns thought they might be able to do something with DeShone Kizer. Obviously, we know how that turned out. And the following year, again with the number 1 overall pick, they selected Baker Mayfield. But all that to say, the Titans kind of face a similar decision. Are any of these quarterbacks worthy of the number 1 overall pick? The Browns' answer back in 2017 was no. So they took Myles Garrett. Pretty good pick, even though Patrick Mahomes went later on at 10. Titans face a similar decision, and that's what makes this number 1 pick fascinating. The number of possibilities. Yes, they could stick and pick and take a quarterback. They could stick and pick and take a Travis Hunter or an Abdul Carter. They could trade back. They could trade back to a spot where they can still get away with drafting Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter if the Giants are that desperate to move up to 1 to get a quarterback. They could just say draft capital is the goal here and trade back to 9 with the Saints, right? Trade back to 6 with the Raiders. The options are endless with the Titans in this draft.
I think the interesting difference between this and 2017 is there isn't a consensus non-quarterback best player.
Correct.
Which I think leans more into a trade down.
The further we get into the pre-draft process, the more split it sounds like a lot of NFL draft experts and analysts are on the number 1 overall player in this draft between Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. It's rare to see a big board with either of these quarterbacks listed as the number 1 overall player. Most of the time, they're in that 10 to 12 range. So, a lot of options in front of the Titans right now. That, by nature, makes their offseason a fascinating one. But outside of the Titans, I think the team with the most interesting offseason ahead of them has to be the Cincinnati Bengals. And we talked about this a little bit during Super Bowl week when Joe Burrow was making the rounds at Radio Row down in New Orleans. Because as you look at the star power that the Bengals have in Cincinnati right now, Jamar Chase, Bengals exercised his 5th-year option for 2025. It's a contract year for him. We know T. Higgins is a free agent, probably the best free agent available come March 12th when the new league year opens up. Mike Gesicki, tight end, going to be a free agent. You have star edge rusher Trey Hendrickson, who's gone back-to-back years with 17.5 sacks, led the NFL, publicly requesting that the Bengals trade or extend him. This will be a contract year for him. And then on top of all of that, your lead tackler and defensive captain Jermaine Pratt has already requested a trade. 2025 would be a contract year for Pratt. And then this was Joe Burrow. We played the audio of him with Stephen A. and Shannon Sharp on ESPN campaigning for the Bengals to get the band back together, so to speak. And then this was Burrow on that same week. This is with Fox Sports, Jackson, correct?
Yes, their show called The Breakfast Ball.
Joe Burrow with Fox on Radio Row.
Do you have the faith in the Brown family and the Bengals organization to do what Philly has done, San Francisco has done, and that spend and spend and spend so that they don't waste these prime years of a generational quarterback?
Yeah, I do. You know, we have the cap space to get it done.
Right.
And I know, I want to make it happen. Everybody involved, Trey, T, Jamar, Mike G, we all want to stay together. And so when you have guys that are motivated like that, I think, you can get those things done.
So they said, hey, we need you to restructure. It's something you would consider, not knowing what the numbers are. You'd be willing to at least have that type of conversation to keep the core guys together?
Of course.
Got it.
So Joe Burrow at every turn is making his feelings felt on what he thinks the Bengals should do. All of this happening for a team that I still consider to be in a Super Bowl window. I know they missed the playoffs last year, but Joe Burrow was asked not that long ago about the Bengals' window. He said, the window is my career, and I completely agree with him. So you've got this team that could actually go all in here. They've been kicking the can on all of these guys. They tagged T. Higgins last year. But an ownership group that is notoriously reluctant to spend big on its own players. So the dichotomy of all of that makes the Bengals offseason a fascinating one to me. T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Mike Gesicki, Trey Hendrickson. I mean, Mike Gesicki's not necessarily a top-of-market tight end. He's up there. He's a really good pass-catching option at tight end, but Trey Hendrickson is top-of-market pass rusher. Obviously, Jamar Chase, arguably, not arguably right now, he just won the Triple Crown. He's the best wide receiver in the NFL. And T. Higgins is going to get top of market money at the wide receiver position. Nobody really thinks it's with the Bengals, but Joe Burrow's demanding that it is. And you've got a new defensive coordinator in place, hiring Al Golden after he helped Notre Dame to the national championship game following the firing of Lou Anarumo, who's now in the AFC South as the defensive coordinator of the Indianapolis Colts. So to me, the Bengals are up there. Now, a tier below them, you have to look to the teams that are going to be the teams that are going to kind of push that first domino in the quarterback carousel. And who are those teams right now?
The Vikings.
The Vikings, and I would say the Los Angeles Rams. Those are my top three right now. The NFL teams with the most interesting offseason. We'll say top four and lump the Titans in there with the number one overall pick and all the possibilities in front of them. But Titans, Bengals, Rams, Vikings. Now, in terms of teams that can make contending moves in 2025, that list goes down to Bengals, Rams, and Vikings. Titans are more than an offseason away, and we know that. But by nature, having the number one overall pick makes it a fascinating offseason ahead, certainly here in Nashville. One thing we do know is that the Bengals will not be a part of the quarterback carousel in the offseason, but which quarterback will be the first domino to fall? Will it be one of those teams that we just mentioned? We'll talk about that next on 104.5 The Zone.
It is 11 o'clock. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Jackson Williams. The Tennessee Vols men's basketball team got back into the win column on Saturday with a comeback win over Vanderbilt in Knoxville by a score of 81-76. Vols trailed by 16 at one point, but Zakai Ziegler's 22 second-half points lifted the Vols over the Commodores. Vols get a full week of rest before they hit the road to take on top 10-ranked Texas A&M this Saturday. Tennessee baseball back on the diamond this weekend to begin their national title defense. They swept Hofstra in a 3-game series by a combined score of 46-2. The Vols will take on UNC Asheville tomorrow afternoon in a midweek matchup. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, you need to visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Welcome back. Hour 2, we are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. I'm Lucas Panzica, Buck Off, celebrating presidents here on this President Day. Who will be the first quarterback domino to fall in the NFL, in the quarterback carousel of 2025? There are 2 very key names here. Now, we have one team that has already said what they're going to do at the quarterback position, has at least pre-announced one move, and that is the Jets officially announcing that they will be moving on from Aaron Rodgers. He reportedly will be a post-June 1st designation in terms of his release, but he will be available come free agency March 12th. Now, Aaron Rodgers, there's not necessarily going to be a sweepstakes for Aaron Rodgers, right? The way there would have been even just 2 years ago. So who are we looking to? 2 places, the Los Angeles Rams and the Minnesota Vikings. Now, I think the consensus here is that the first quarterback domino that could fall is Matthew Stafford. The Rams are in an interesting spot with Matthew Stafford. And we've referenced this article a few times. Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated, right after the Super Bowl, did his 10 storylines to watch in the 2025 NFL offseason. One of them, he says, I think Matthew Stafford is the big domino in this year's quarterback market. He says that, to be clear, does not mean he's going to be available in March. It does mean that teams are keeping an eye on what happens with Stafford and the Los Angeles Rams in mapping out their plans. After the Rams moved $5 million from the final 2 years of his deal into 2024, guaranteed all of 24, and removed all future guarantees in his contract last summer, there was an agreement struck to revisit his status after the season. That time has come. 2 things, I think, says Breer, will determine how this goes. The first will be how much he wants. The second will be whether he's willing to commit to playing for just another year. He continues, the Rams have built a nice young core. As that core starts to come of age, what the team would like to avoid is landing in some sort of desperate situation at the most important position on the field. So, if Stafford wants a big contract adjustment and someone is offering a first-round pick and he's not sure if he can commit to 2026, that's where I could see this getting interesting. That is per Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated. So everybody's just kind of peeking over at LA out of the corner of their eye.
Just looking over, out of the peripheral.
Right. Like, I think we're all looking at Minnesota. Like, what are you going to do with Sam Darnold? Because there's a very obvious crossroads here. He's about to be a free agent.
And there's a deadline for franchise tag, March 4th at 4 p.m.
Just a couple weeks.
2 weeks from tomorrow.
So there's a very clear fork in the road here for Minnesota. You either keep Sam Darnold on a long-term deal, you franchise tag Sam Darnold, keep him for another year, or you let him walk. And you let him go to the highest bidder in free agency. We put it to a poll. At Lucas Panzica is where you can go vote. What should the Vikings do at quarterback? The options were franchise tag Sam Darnold, give Darnold a new contract, let Darnold walk, and roll with J.J. McCarthy, the first-round quarterback drafted out of Michigan in 2024, or find another solution. I mean, if Aaron Rodgers wants to continue down the Brett Favre legacy path, maybe he wants to push for a move to Minnesota. I don't know that Minnesota would be interested. But there's a very clear crossroads in regards to Darnold. So we're all looking at Minnesota. What are you going to do? We're asking Minnesota what they're going to do, but just kind of peeking over at L.A.
Just seeing if there's any commotion over there.
Because I think Matthew Stafford is the only quarterback in this carousel, the only potential domino of these quarterbacks that can actually get a team excited about their ceiling in 2025. Do you agree with that? Like how Darnold had a phenomenal year and things sputtered at the end. You lose the regular season finale, the battle for the 1 seed in the NFC in Detroit, and you lose, ironically, to the Rams in the playoffs. Matt Stafford beating Sam Darnold and the Vikings in that wild card game. So it sputtered at the end, but we've talked about it multiple times. Sam Darnold just led the Vikings to their best regular season since the late 90s. So if you're Minnesota, are you looking to continue that thread? Do you think you can still get the best? Can you get better out of Sam Darnold than you got in 2024? So much of this depends on what they think of Sam Darnold in the building relative to what they think of J.J. McCarthy, who missed his rookie season injured with a knee injury. So, is Sam Darnold enough to get a fan base excited for 2025? I guess a fan base will talk themselves into whatever quarterback ends up there. But in terms of legitimately altering what you think your team's ceiling can be, how much does Darnold do that for you? Because I think Stafford will do that for a fan base if he is to leave the LA Rams.
Yeah, Stafford won a Super Bowl. That's the difference. And Stafford, in my opinion, is a much better player.
Oh, he absolutely is.
Because I think with Sam Darnold, he had to be in the perfect position to succeed. I just don't think he gets you as excited. But what gets you excited is you have Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson and all these really fun offensive weapons for whoever is playing quarterback is put in a really good position to succeed.
Which is going to play into the Vikings' decision here. Do we need to pay Sam Darnold $40 million a year, or do we think we can succeed with the rookie who has not played a snap in the NFL? It's a risky proposition. My personal opinion, I think when you have good quarterback play, you keep it, and I think the Vikings would be insane not to at least tag Sam Darnold for the 2025 season. Don't have to give him a 4-year deal, but to at least keep Darnold in 2025, I think it is an insanely risky move by Minnesota to cut Darnold loose and roll the dice with a second-year quarterback that missed his rookie year due to injury, and we've never seen a sample size of, apart from 1 or 2 preseason games. Seems like a big risk for a team right in the midst of a Super Bowl window.
It is, but you probably got to take it at some point. At some point, you're going to have to take the risk and go with the guy you drafted in the first round.
The argument for Sam Darnold is that he is on an ascension, right? The argument against Matt Stafford is that he's not on that sort of ascension, but he can give you stable quarterback play that, when it's at its best, is barely a tier below the Joe Burrows and Josh Allens and Lamar Jackson and Pat Mahomes of the NFL. He's 37 years old. Matthew Stafford turned 37 10 days ago. In the 2025 season, Stafford threw for over 3,700 yards. He completed over 65% of his passes for 20 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. And I feel like this is going to be the most forgotten thing as we continue into this NFL offseason. But the LA Rams were literally 1 play away from hosting the NFC Championship game. From hosting the Washington Commanders in the NFC Championship. I'm of the mind that the Commanders' run would have ended in the conference championship no matter what. So it is my opinion that if the Rams had scored from, what were they, inside the 30-yard line on the last play of the game against the Eagles in the divisional round, that if they had scored a touchdown on that play, I think the LA Rams would have been the team in the Super Bowl over the Philadelphia Eagles. 1 play away.
Yeah, I agree.
So they're in an interesting spot as Stafford has 2 years left on his deal in L.A. We mentioned all of the readjustments they made to his contract from Albert Breer just a moment ago, but there is a potential out here for the Rams to incur a dead cap hit of over $49 million if they release Sam Darnold. His cap hit for the next 2 years is $49.6 million and $53.6 million, respectively. There's also this alternate possibility, as we talk about who's going to be the first domino to fall, that neither of these guys start the domino process. That the Rams just decide to stick with Matt Stafford. That the Vikings decide to stick with Sam Darnold. Then what?
Then
Then
the
who
market
becomes...
for Aaron Rodgers gets a lot more interesting.
Then, exactly, the attention shifts over to Aaron Rodgers and what the Saints are going to do with Derek Carr.
Aaron Rodgers could hold the NFL quarterback market hostage.
I don't know about hold it hostage. I don't think there's enough teams that will bend over backwards for Aaron Rodgers to say he'll be able to hold it hostage, but he will, from a football standpoint, be the best free agent available. He already is. He right now is. Strictly from a talent standpoint. Not everything that comes with it. But I don't think teams are going to lose their minds over the possibility of having Aaron Rodgers this year the way they would have just 2 years ago. But there's a very real possibility. This quarterback carousel can go one of two ways. The Rams decide to split with Stafford. The Vikings decide to split with Darnold. And then it's not necessarily chaos. We've seen crazier quarterback carousels, but then everybody's spinning and the domino effect really begins. Or Rams keep Stafford, Vikings keep Darnold. Say, no, we feel like we're still in a window with these guys. We're gonna try to max this out. And then you're sitting there with Aaron Rodgers and potentially Derek Carr, if the Saints decide to cut him loose, as your best options. And then you get down into the Russell Wilson, Justin Fields tiers of free agency. So there's a pivot point here in this quarterback carousel that hinges on what the Minnesota Vikings and Los Angeles Rams want to do at the quarterback position. And it's going to be really interesting to see play out. Now, one team that we know will not be in the market for a quarterback, the Jacksonville Jaguars. So we had that report come down Friday morning from Ryan Burr, very random, a Big Ten Network analyst who covers a lot of golf, suddenly telling us straight from the horse's mouth, according to the Twitter account of Ryan Burr in Jacksonville, that the Steelers have called to inquire about Trevor Lawrence. Since then, it's been refuted. You had Michael DeRocco, who covers the Jags for ESPN, saying, no, the Jags have no interest in trading Lawrence. And then Tom Pelissero refuting the idea that the Steelers even called to kick the tires on Trevor Lawrence. The Jags also don't really have anyone to call right now. There's no general manager in Jacksonville. And we have not talked about this since Friday, when Titans general manager John Robinson was involved in the process in the Jags GM search. Well, the Jags GM search has been whittled down to 5 finalists to replace the fired Trent Baalke. John Robinson is not one of them. Now, these 5 finalists, as the Jags put out just 2 days ago, are Ian Cunningham, the Bears assistant GM who interviewed here, James Gladstone, John Eric Sullivan from the Packers, who also interviewed here, Ethan Waugh, I hope I'm saying that name correctly, W-A-U-G-H, and Josh Williams. None of those 5 guys have been a general manager in the NFL before. So John Robinson will not be a GM retread in the 2025 cycle and will not be the general manager of the Jags. In-person interviews for Jacksonville begin on Wednesday. Combine's next week. So clock's ticking for the Jacksonville Jaguars, but John Robinson officially out of that search. When we come back, busy weekend in Knoxville. Tennessee basketball with a major win over Vanderbilt. Tennessee baseball kicking off the 2025 season. Eric Kane of VolQuest joins us next on 104.5 The Zone.
Did you know you're overpaying for your health and wellness products?
With over 20 company-owned brands offering its members vitamins, supplements, wellness, and skincare products, you're able to save up to 70% off retail.
Members Nutrition can't change your life, but we can change the way you live.
Tyre, when should I start to draw from Social Security? If these questions keep you up at night, let me introduce you to the team that's there to keep you on the right track and guide you through it. That's Trajan Wealth, Trajan Wealth. Not just any financial firm. They're your partners in securing your financial future. And Trajan Wealth is more than just a fiduciary firm. They're a family-owned, veteran-led team that puts your needs first. Let their decades of experience specializing in retirement planning and wealth management work for you. Trajan Wealth offers free consultations to help you develop your plan and your peace of mind. So call them today at 615-270-5000. That's 615-270-5000, or visit them online at TrajanWealth.com. Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. This is a paid advertisement.
Welcome back. Appreciate you hanging out with us on this President's Day Monday. Lucas Panzico with you. Busy weekend in Knoxville, Tennessee. Obviously, the game at Thompson Bowling Arena on Saturday, Vols coming back to beat Vanderbilt. Simultaneously, Tennessee baseball was opening up its season at Lindsey Nelson Stadium, a half-renovated Lindsey Nelson Stadium, as Eric Kane joins us from VolQuest over in East Tennessee. Eric, is that even fair to call it half-renovated, or is it still in the very much beginning stages? As I know a lot of you guys were in the elements in the freezing cold Saturday night while everybody was toasty and warm watching a Vols comeback in the arena just next door on Saturday. I think Eric might be muted there on Zoom.
There we go. It's my first time doing this, right?
It happens to all the best of us.
It is definitely fair to say that it's halfway, if not beyond. I mean, you can see the plan. You know, we all got the renovations, like the renderings, you know, in years past, and now you can actually see it. And I think fans, as you go to the ballpark over the course of the season, from weekend to weekend, you're going to start seeing new things continue to be added on. I mean, they're going to continue working this thing. So it is going to be just a gorgeous ballpark when it's all said and done. And it'd be hard pressed to find another baseball program, another university in the country that is pouring more resources and investment into the baseball program, you know, all told with the staff, you know, NIL, the stadium and all that than Tennessee right now. So it was still much better than what we were last year. Sure, we were in the elements a little bit, but we had all this room. It was nice. And of course, it was good to see a season opening series sweep of Hofstra.
Yeah, and being in the elements won't be so bad in just a few weeks in East Tennessee. Yeah. No doubt about that. Eric Kane, you can follow him on Twitter @_Kaner, covers the Vols for VolQuest, the best in the business. So we'll get into the baseball stuff with a check-in on their season opening series against Hofstra, but I know you weren't covering it on Saturday, but Tennessee basketball against Vanderbilt. We opened the show talking about it, Eric, and I left that game obviously feeling good about Tennessee's second half performance, confident in the way that they turned it around and sort of showed us what this team can be at its best, but they also showed us what they can be at their worst in the first half, and I feel like I leave more confused than anything. What's the general tenor around this basketball team in Knoxville at the moment?
Well, it's kind of confusing, right? Because when you're on and when you're playing the way you're capable of playing, I mean, I think the sky's the limit. I mean, this is a team that can certainly make a deep run in March. This is a team that's, you know, could go back to an Elite Eight like you were last year. But nonetheless, it's also a team that if you're not defending the three-point arc, which Tennessee's one of the best defensive teams in the country in that regard, if you're not defending the three-point arc, if you're not, you know, if you have stretches there where you're allowing 44 points in the first half, which I don't believe Tennessee's done at all this season, then it's a team that could probably be bounced early in the tournament, first or second weekend. So it's kind of one of those things, and we talk about it on tomorrow's VolQuest podcast, where do you leave encouraged, knowing that this is yet another rally? The Missouri game comes to mind where you were kind of in a hole early on and you dug yourself out of it. And, you know, Kentucky was another one where you came up just short. But do you leave encouraged knowing that Tennessee can flip that switch, or do you leave more frustrated saying, well, gosh, man, if you just hit a couple of shots and made a couple of stops in the first half, this game would be completely different. So I don't know. It's kind of up and down. It was good to see Zakai Ziegler do what he did in the second half. Good to see Chaz Lanier knock down some shots. Tennessee's defense had to be a whole lot better in the second half, obviously, than it was in the first half. So it's a win. It was at home. You've got to win those games at home for sure. It's just this league. There's no easy days in this league. That's for sure. It's like Big East basketball back in the day.
And Tennessee, after that Missouri game that you mentioned, digging out of an 11-point hole and 57 second half points, kind of similar, not the rivalry aspect of it like it was Saturday against Vanderbilt, but they continued that momentum, right? They went on the road and routed Oklahoma, were able to hang 70 in Norman before, you know, that momentum kind of stopped abruptly at Kentucky with another poor three-point shooting performance. And now we see what they do against A&M next Saturday, but it does feel like the perfect time, right, for Tennessee to not have a midweek game coming up.
Yeah, I think so. You know, and I think it's a really, really good time. I mean, Tennessee's already got a short rotation. Tennessee's dealt with its fair share of injuries, just like, you know, a lot of teams around the country and around this league. So kind of the perfect time to, you know, get on the practice field, get in the film room, you know, try to fix your mistakes, get some rest, and then get back at it. A&M is going to be a challenge on the road. Obviously, you got Alabama the following Saturday. This 5-game stretch is going to be really critical for Tennessee. Take care of business at home, and because of all the respect that the national, or you know, publications have for Tennessee, I think you're still looking at being on that 2 line no matter what if you take care of business at home. So we'll see what happens. Dangerous team, but obviously it's been much better to win in the way that it did on Saturday than to lose like it has a couple of times after coming up short in the second half after a rally.
Yeah, first team on the 2 line. Tennessee named the 5th overall seed as it currently stands over the weekend by the committee. Vols are also a couple games back of a top 4 spot in the SEC right now, Eric, sitting 6th in the standings, 8-5, right behind Missouri, who's 8-4, obviously with a game in hand. To you, what do you place more importance in? Having a top 4 seed in the SEC tournament or having the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament?
I mean, can't those go hand in hand, right?
Yeah.
I mean, say you're a top 4 seed in the SEC tournament. I'm not saying you have to win the whole thing because I think years past have shown us that the committee has that thing wrapped up, ready to go on Saturday night, and what happens on Sunday literally doesn't matter. But if you get a top 4 seed in the SEC tournament and things happen elsewhere, potentially like some upsets early on, then I think that could maybe propel you to being on that 1 line potentially. So we'll see. But I think overall, being on that 1 line would obviously be better for Tennessee. Some things have to happen than being in the top 4 seed in the SEC. Again, this is just a league this year that's it's so incredibly tough. And I think the Wednesday and Thursday matchups are going to be huge for those seeding purposes in the SEC tournament, when maybe in years past it didn't really much matter. But this year the league is so deep. So at the end of the day, being a top seed would be awesome, or being on that 1 line would be awesome. I think if you are a top 4 seed, you can be on your way. Obviously, we would need some help too, but I think you'd be on your way.
Yeah, still a tough 5-game stretch to finish the regular season with ranked matchups against A&M, Bama, and Ole Miss still to come. Eric Kane of VolQuest, our guest on 104.5 The Zone. Eric, to pivot to some football discussion here, as we're about a month away from the start of spring practice in Knoxville, I heard this discussion that you guys were having on the VolQuest podcast last week. I thought it was interesting, and you guys you zoomed in on the quarterback position, but to you, as the roster currently stands for Tennessee, are the Vols a more talented team in 2025, or were they a more talented team in 2024, understanding there could be more moves to come?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really interesting discussion because at first glance, you're going to say, well, no, they're not as talented as they were last year. You lost Cooper Mays and Dylan Sampson and Brew McCoy, Dante Thornton, so on and so forth. And I get that. But from a roster perspective, again, this roster continues to get better every single year, every single cycle, because you're recruiting the way you need to. I think the evaluations have been really, really good. And in certain spots, now not in all spots, but I think in certain spots, the development has been there. Now, we're going to have to see on the offensive line. I mean, push is going to come to shove this spring and this fall. Is David Sanders going to be your day 1 starting right tackle? We'll see. Somebody's going to have to step up and play one of those interior spots. Max Anderson, William Satterwhite, somebody, right? And then we'll see what these transfers have coming in. But again, just look at all these position groups, for the most part. Defensive line, man, you are loaded. Linebacker, you have more options, more depth, more experience than you've ever had. The secondary has come so far, and from this time last year to this year. Sure, McCoy's a guy, Ricky Gibson's a guy, but you feel better about some of those role players. Boo Carter, you feel better about a guy coming up like Idris Farouk, and the tight end position is deep. And, the 2 big question marks, offensive line, wide receiver, I recognize that. But I still think that right now this roster is more talented in terms of it's just continued to build and build and build, and you stack classes on one another than where it was this time last year or 2 years ago. Just kind of the nature of kind of rebuilding a program like Heupel's been doing the last 4 years.
This is a question I know you guys have gotten a lot over at VolQuest as Tennessee fans look around and see the general manager carousel spinning across college football. Every year, Eric, we have these new phrases and things that would have sounded completely alien just 10 years ago. But is that a trend that you could see Josh Heupel jumping in on at any point, bringing in a GM to help just put together his roster?
I think so. Certainly would never say never. I don't know if there's any immediate plans for that to happen right now, but I definitely think so. I mean, everybody else is doing it. Look at the teams in the college football playoff that had success. They've got general managers, so it's kind of like, well, why wouldn't you at least try it? I will be quick to say, though there's not a quote-unquote general manager in place, those roles are being facilitated. Like, there are people doing those roles. So like that job is still getting done. But if you want to appoint one person to kind of be over that said position, I think it's something worth looking into. I think it's also important too the general manager position would be defined maybe differently at other places. You see Andrew Luck, at Stanford, former player. You're seeing NFL guys coming in and acting as general managers at other programs like at North Carolina. What does that position, what is that role at said program? But at the end of the day, I think it's got to be a guy that is willing and has to tell your head football coach, no, we can't do that. No, we can't go spend this much in the portal. No, we need to attack this position, not this position in the recruiting class. And I don't think there's a lot of people out there that are comfortable telling the head football coach at any program no. But I think that's important in this general manager position. So we'll see. I certainly could see that happening at some point because it is a evolving position in college football, and you see teams having a whole lot of success with that position. But certainly those responsibilities are, somebody's doing it right now. A committee or a couple of different guys are doing it right now. It'll just be interesting to see if it's a one-person type deal moving forward.
Well, and it's interesting you bring up kind of that proof of concept that the teams that had success in the playoffs showed with that position, because another thread off of that, Eric, and it's something we've talked about here in the last couple of weeks, is sitting back and watching Ryan Day at Ohio State making the transition out of being a play-calling head coach, bringing in Chip Kelly, obviously a very established name, to call the plays, but he's going to continue down that path, promoting Brian Hartline and handing him the keys to call plays. And as soon as Ryan Day does that, Ohio State gets over that championship hump. Now, it helps when you have 3 NFL receivers and just talent stacked across the board. No doubt about that. There's a lot of factors. But it did get me thinking about Josh Heupel and the fact that a play-calling head coach has not won a national title since Jimbo did it with FSU back in 2013. Is that something you would consider a possibility at any point down the line with Josh Heupel if he was able to find the right guy?
Yeah, I certainly think so. And I mean, when Alex Golesh was here, Alex Golesh called a lot of the plays. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm up there in that booth and I know exactly what's going on. I'm at every single practice. I'm not. But I do know that Alex Golesh not only had he was the offensive coordinator, right? Not only did he have a massive role, just like Joey Halzle does right now, in the game plan and how they want to attack each team from week to week to week, but Golesh as well as Halsey, they have a huge, say in what plays are going to be called on this drive. I think it's an open communication. That's how it's been described to me. And of course, that's what Josh Heupel's told us, when we ask him that, multiple headsets are on, it's an open communication and all that. But because he's been willing to allow a guy like Alex Golesh to have such a big piece of the pie in the past, I do believe that, at some point, Josh Heupel would be willing to do that again. It's interesting, that you bring that up about, play callers, offensive play callers haven't won a national championship since Jimbo, and you see more and more coaches kind of relinquish that. Josh Heupel loves ball. He loves scheming those things up. He loves calling plays. He loves celebrating on the sideline. I think that would be difficult for him to do, but certainly you're seeing a lot of his peers who have done that. So, we'll see what the future holds, but I know that it's not just him. Clearly, it's Joey Halsey, Clint Ellerby's got a big hand in that and all that. And I think it's the exact dynamic. I don't know, in the headset, calling the plays every weekend, but it's certainly just not him to begin with.
NFL Scouting Combine invite list came out last week. Were you surprised to see Cooper Mays and Amari Thomas left out?
A little bit. I mean, I look at, ESPN's, top 10 available at each position and all that. And Dylan Sampson's way down there, but this is such a loaded running back class. Yeah. It was good that he got an invite. Cooper Mays is not even listed on that on what I'm looking at right now over at ESPN, which is kind of surprising. But it seems like it's a deep draft class for traditional centers. Obviously, running backs, defensive line. There's so many across the country. Was not shocked about Elijah Simmons because he is just such a physical specimen, if you will. He moves so well, quick twitch, to be where he is at about 340 pounds. And like we talk about with quarterbacks all the time, it just takes one coach to say, oh, yeah, I can work with that. Yeah, I can do something with that. Omar Norman Law, self-explanatory, obviously James Pierce. I wasn't shocked that Cooper Mays didn't get invited, maybe a bit surprised, but I was really happy and expected that Dylan Sampson got an invitation just because, man, that class is so loaded with so many good ball carriers.
Dominant weekend, as expected, for Tennessee baseball, kicking off the 2025 season as Eric Kane of VolQuest joins us. What were your biggest takeaways on the opening sweep over Hofstra?
Yeah, a lot of talented freshmen that we're going to see play for Tennessee. And I understand Hofstra's, not LSU, not Arkansas, not Vanderbilt, but, to see these freshmen come in. I mean, Manny Marion got 2 starts at third base this weekend. Chris Newstrom got 2 starts in left field. Levi Clark got to start at designated hitter. Jay Abernathy, who several of us, projected to be the opening day starting left fielder for Tennessee, didn't start any of those games, but played in all three and played numerous positions. So there's just a lot of talent in this freshman class. Number one recruiting class in the country for the 24 cycle, according to Perfect Game. So that was my biggest takeaway. And then just kind of seeing how all this evolves as you go on. I mean, they're in Houston, not this weekend, but next weekend. Then they come back for one non-conference series before Florida comes to town. So there's still a lot of things to work out, the rotation and all that and more. But I think this freshman class with those four guys I just mentioned, Tegan Coons, a pitcher who didn't pitch this past weekend. He's been a little bit sick, but he's going to be a stud as well. Stop me if you've heard this before. Tony Vitello knows how to evaluate talent, sign talent, and develop talent. And that's kind of what we're seeing right now. And there's a whole lot of talent in the freshman class for this Tennessee baseball team.
Are you prepared for the weather that's about to come through Tennessee this week for that Tuesday matchup against UNC Asheville?
Talking among some of my colleagues, contingency plans are being discussed. I mean, that is going to be brutal, but one way or the other, we're gonna make it work. And of course, we'll bring you all that coverage over at VolQuest.com. So I'm just glad baseball's back. I love baseball. It's fun to watch, and especially if you cover a team that is as good as Tennessee is, it makes for a fun weekend.
Check him out, Eric Kane of VolQuest, the VolQuest podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, also the host of the Locked on Vols daily podcast. Eric, always appreciate the time, man. We'll talk soon.
Hey, thanks so much, guys.
@_Kaner on Twitter is where you can follow him. Covers every corner of Tennessee athletics. Appreciate him giving us some time. There is significant news on changes that are coming to the college football playoff. And also, one national championship winning coach has the Vols on his list of contenders for 2025. You'll hear that next on 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back. Continuing on this President's Day Monday, some sneaky big news in the world of college football dropped yesterday. Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports yesterday afternoon with an article titled Sources, the SEC and Big Ten building momentum to further expand the college football playoff to 14 or 16 teams. Dellinger says last spring, during intense and at times heated negotiations over the future of the college football playoff, leaders of the Big Ten and SEC threatened to create their own postseason system if they were not granted a majority of CFP revenue and full authority over the playoff format. In the end, executives of the 10 FBS leagues and Notre Dame signed a memorandum of understanding handing control over to college football's two richest conferences, and soon they are expected to exercise that control. Dellinger continues, within the SEC and Big Ten, momentum is building to further expand the playoff to 14 or 16 teams, assign multiple automatic qualifiers per league, as many as 4 each for themselves, and finalize a scheduling agreement together that may fetch millions in additional revenue from TV partners, sources told Yahoo Sports. He says the playoff format change would clear the way for SEC administrators to finally make the long-discussed move to play 9 regular season conference games, and that would trigger, perhaps, all 4 power leagues to overhaul their conference championship weekend. So some pretty seismic news here in terms of the future of the college football playoff. Now, worth noting, this is for 2026. 2025, the college football playoff format will remain as is, 12-team format. Now, can they make adjustments to the seeding? We'll see if that's the case, but it will be 12 teams in a similar, if not the exact same format that we saw in 2024. But a memorandum of understanding has been signed by all 10 FBS leagues plus Notre Dame, essentially to hand control over to the SEC and Big Ten. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in to tell us your thoughts. Dellinger goes on later in the article talking about what the format could look like. He says leaders in each conference have spent the last several weeks evolving a format idea, multiple automatic qualifiers per league, into a more realistic proposal. The 14 or 16 team model would grant 4 automatic qualifiers each to the SEC and Big Ten, 2 each to the ACC and Big 12, and 1 to the highest-ranked Group of 5 champion. It includes 1 or 3 at-large spots, depending on, of course, if it's 14 or 16. One of those intended for Notre Dame if it finishes ranked inside the top 14, a guarantee specifically designated for the Irish that is part of that CFP memorandum.
I don't like Notre Dame having a guaranteed spot.
They have a guaranteed spot if they're in the top 14. You're not a fan of that.
I don't like it. It's one team. I don't think there should be a memorandum for one team. And I get it's for the whole college football playoff, the memorandum. But I just don't think throwing one team in there, I don't like it.
Yeah, most people don't. Now, I had a ton of fun. A lot of people had a ton of fun with keeping track of the college football playoff rankings throughout the course of the year, keeping track of the way the committee seemed to move the goalposts. And it was just amplified, right? With a 12-team playoff. The committee, that has been consistent. They have not been consistent in what their parameters are, especially as the committee turns over in terms of its members, but they have been consistent in their inconsistencies, right? And for the neutral observer, it made the week-to-week discussion across college football so exciting with a 12-team playoff when you see, okay, Tennessee is a 9 seed this week. Oh, why did BYU jump Tennessee after a big win over Utah, right? Or the committee giving credence to Indiana for beating Michigan because the AD at Michigan is the chair of the CFP committee. That conversation, it felt like, Jackson, it powered the discussion around college football throughout the course of the season. Yeah. And I know that college football fans, and I obviously am a massive college football fan. But a lot of college football fans did not like that aspect of it because they felt like it took away from the games.
I loved it. It made me watch games more intently.
That's where I am at.
I thought I had more fun watching college football this season because of the rankings and seeing where teams were going to move and stuff like that. Because, like, odds are I was probably going to watch, like, a Boise State game, but I wasn't going to be so in tune to Boise State's season as we got closer to the playoffs as I would have been any other year.
Absolutely. I cared so much more about BYU versus Arizona State.
Or BYU and Colorado.
Exactly. Than I ever would have cared about that matchup, right? It's college football. I love college football. If it's a good environment, a good game, I'll watch it. But with that added importance, so there's no question that discussion kind of helped motor just the general discourse around college football in 2024. But at the same time, as fun as that has been, we have to settle on some sort of consistency here. And I understand why fans won't like this, but the truth is there's been an imbalance in college football as long as college football has existed. And especially in the modern age, with the current state of the SEC and Big Ten, it was always unsustainable to go about this acting like the SEC and Big Ten did not have this disproportionate amount of power. The scales were always going to tip. And it seems like they largely have. Now, they haven't agreed on the exact format, but this 4-4-2-2-1-1 scenario, so to speak, sign me up for that because you can still create that discussion with the at-large bids. Like, teams will still jockey for that. But to have 4 automatic qualifiers in the SEC and Big Ten, for me, it does 2 things. It will ensure that the best teams in the country are in the college football playoff. And you have an opportunity here to bring back the added importance of conference championship weekend. Most of the discussion around the conference championship games in college football were about how they didn't really matter unless you are Arizona State, right? Arizona State and Iowa State essentially played a playoff game in the Big 12 championship. Winners in, losers out. But that was not the case in the SEC. When you have SEC head coaches talking about the importance or lack thereof of making the conference championship when you can find another path to the playoff that doesn't include the risk of getting left out. So if there is a seeding system here that has the top 2 teams in each conference playing each other for the conference championship with the guarantee that they'll be in, then suddenly there's so much more to play for in that conference championship game. And you don't worry about that risk of being bounced out of the field entirely if you lose. So I'm into this more than maybe most people will be. Duck Falling on the F&M Bank chat says, don't get me wrong, the regular season was exciting. Postseason was meh. Kids jumping into the portal during the playoffs did not sit well with me. There is so much that has to happen here, but I'm okay with this as a big first step towards some sort of consistency and continuity with the playoff format. We'll see, as discussions will continue with leadership, what the next step will be. But, again, 2025 format will be the same. And just last week, on the Triple Option podcast with Rob Stone, Mark Ingram, and former Florida and Ohio State head coach Urban Meyer, they were discussing contenders for the 2025 season. Urban Meyer asked for his dark horse for the upcoming season of college football.
Yeah, Nico, the quarterback at Tennessee. You know, I had them. I remember when I first started studying them last year, and I called Brady Quinn and Matt Leinart, and I said, what am I missing here? This guy looks like a bona fide. He looks like Aaron Rodgers. The ball comes out of his hand like a tennis ball, man.
Kent State.
Good point. That's what I was missing. And he got really inconsistent, and that team around him got a little bit inconsistent. They still had a heck of a year. So if that kid grows as a quarterback, he could be I asked the question after watching, and I know he wasn't playing great teams, but just his physical ability, his size, speeds, athleticism, and the ball comes out. I saw him as a high first-round draft pick. Now, it remains to be seen, but I'll pick Tennessee.
Urban Meyer with Tennessee as his dark horse to win the 2025 national championship. Jackson Williams always been a big Urban Meyer fan.
Okay, let's not do that, buddy.
I think you've always considered him to be just an exemplary citizen. I think That's what you said to me the other day when we were listening to that audio.
Hate you.
Urban's
It's like Bucks here.
three biggest. You're right. That was mean. Urban's three champion picks for next season. Texas number 1, Ohio State number 2, Oregon number 3, with Tennessee as his dark horse. Jackson, where do you think Tennessee ranks as a national championship contender? Looking at the FanDuel Sportsbook national championship odds.
In the odds, I'm going to say they're 8th.
You're close. They're 7th, plus 1,600. Ohio State is the favorite, plus 600. Texas at plus 650. Oregon tied at plus 650. Georgia at plus 700. Penn State plus 800. Notre Dame plus 1,200. Tennessee is tied with Alabama at plus 600 as the number 7 favorite, according to FanDuel Sportsbook. So Urban likes Nico. Urban thinks Tennessee can contend in 2025. The question will be for Nico is, can he power an offense that can make up the talent gap that still very much exists between Tennessee and the Ohio States and Georgias of the world? If he can do that, then yeah, Tennessee's a national championship contender. And we can play the game about, what would Tennessee have done in an expanded playoff where they don't meet Ohio State in the first round. Let's say Tennessee has Penn State's path. Do they end up in the Final Four? You could play that game all day, but when push comes to shove and we're talking about a national championship, the gap was right there. It was in plain sight against Ohio State and against Georgia earlier in the year. Like, that was not a one-off of, they just ran into Ohio State. No, they also ran into Georgia, and they were smothered. So can Nico make up that talent imbalance that still exists? Tennessee, even if it's a more talented team in 2025, on paper, will not be more talented than Georgia and Ohio State. Urban Meyer seems to think they can. So we'll see. Coming up next, we'll discuss what your priorities are for the next quarterback of the Tennessee Titans. What's the number one quality you want to see in the next starting quarterback for the Titans? Hour number 3 coming up next on 104.5 The Zone.
It is 12 o'clock. Good afternoon from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Jackson Williams. The Vols men's basketball team got back into the win column on Saturday with a comeback win over Vanderbilt in Knoxville by a score of 81-76. Vols trailed by 16 at one point, but Zakai Ziegler's 22 second-half points lifted the Vols over the Commodores. Vols get a full week of rest before they hit the road to take on top 10-ranked Texas A&M this Saturday. Tennessee baseball back on the diamond this weekend to begin their national title defense as they swept Hofstra by a combined score of 46-2 over the three-game series. Vols will take on UNC Asheville tomorrow afternoon in a midweek matchup. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, you need to visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Not today. Today it is the Spelling Bee Champ Show. There's one Spelling Bee champion on this show, one documented one at least. I have proof. Buck claims a Spelling Bee championship like an Alabama national title in the 1940s. So until he provides documentation, there is one Spelling Bee champion on this show, and I will continue to tout that proudly.
I think you both should take the ACT at some point.
No,
against each other.
4 hours long.
I don't care.
I don't want to do that.
Like a practice test.
I'm not willing to extend the bit that far, Jackson. That sounds terrible.
Got to commit.
We are live on 104.5 The Zone TV, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch, where you can hang out, like, and subscribe while you're there. What's the number one quality that you want out of the next Titans starting quarterback? Whether it's a drafted rookie, a veteran stopgap, a bridge quarterback, which we've been talking about all offseason. What is the number one asset that you want that quarterback? What number one tool you want them to have in their arsenal as the Titans get ready to head up to Indianapolis? 104.5 The Zone headed up there as well, by the way, as teams get ready to select their draft picks. They'll evaluate over 300 prospects at the Combine. Tune in. We will be broadcasting live 10 to 1. Buck will be in Indianapolis thanks to Wholesale Supply. He will be doing interviews, talking to coaches, analysts from around the league. Of course, Brian Callahan and Mike Borgonzi will be up there. You'll hear from both of them. So for more coverage, more info on our coverage in Indy, visit 1045thezone.com. That'll be all week next week. So number one quality you want in a quarterback. We had John Ledyard on the show last week, and I asked him this because I'm curious as to what people like Ledyard, who study these prospects ad nauseum, who watch the tape, and the way the last couple of years maybe have informed the way they prioritize traits in a quarterback. Because we've seen significant sample sizes of rookie quarterbacks, young quarterbacks, get thrown into the fire in the NFL and just handed the keys to a franchise. We've seen them sink, like Anthony Richardson, like Will Levis, and we've seen them swim. Like, obviously, Jaden Daniels being the most extreme case of success in the last couple of years. We saw it with C.J. Stroud, despite the step back in year two for him. And we kind of saw both for Bryce Young, who got an opportunity to grow out and at some point started to tread water, I'll say, in the back half of his second year with the Panthers. Here was John Ledyard on the number one trait he is now looking for in a young quarterback.
Yeah, I think it continues to be reinforced to me that the mental aspect of this position matters more than anything else. I mean, Bo Nix offense in college was, he was really struggled at Auburn, went to Oregon. They kind of remade everything, right? It was like really point and shoot, simple, lots of quick game stuff, lots of screens. They led the nation in screens, I think. You just didn't get a great feel from his tape that he was going to be anything special in the NFL. And then his pocket presence was really something that seemed to struggle. Well, a lot of that was because if the ball didn't come out immediately in their system, there usually was no other option for him. But you still didn't know, just because he didn't have to do this often in college doesn't mean he will be able to do it well in the NFL. Then he gets to the NFL, and right away he's not taking sacks. The ball's coming out on time. You look at his rookie season, he's not doing a lot of those things. So you say, well, what can cause that to happen? Just mental aptitude. Sean Payton's system is one of the toughest probably to master. And you could see that early on for Nix. the communication aspect of it, big, long, wordy play calls. And so I didn't know that about him. You know what I mean? So the teams have really good access to that, but often some of that leaks out during the process. So you can get fooled by it, but you do have to trust some of that. Like at that position, what kind of worker are you? How mentally engaged are you? How quick and sharp are you to pick up new concepts? How good of a memory do you have? Like all those things matter so much. And every team's got a different way of kind of evaluating that. But those aspects of things matter a lot. And so paying attention to those things as much as we can from our vantage point during the pre-draft process, it helps inform our decision, even if there's no foolproof way to do it.
So that was an interesting answer from Ledyard, because he points out the between the ears aspect being the most important for a young quarterback to have success, but goes on to talk about Bo Nix and how he didn't necessarily think that about Nix just watching the tape as a guy that could key and diagnose, that could dissect and break down defenses with the snap of a finger. Clearly, the Broncos liked what they heard and saw in their meetings with Bo Nix, and that worked out pretty well. Now, that was a pretty good situation for Bo Nix. Experienced veteran play-calling head coach, very solid offensive line group, talented roster, talented rookie class that he came in with, and he was able to have success. You could argue Bo Nix, I don't even know if it's that much of an argument. Bo Nix was the second best rookie quarterback of the season in 2024, right behind Jayden Daniels, who did several things that we have literally never seen from a starting quarterback in his rookie year. Jael on the F&M Bank chat says, accuracy, second, is the ability to read a defense. So we put this to a poll at Lucas Panzica on Twitter. What's the number one quality that you want out of your next Titans quarterback? And Easton Freeze asked this question of Brian Callahan during their discussion on A to Z Sports a few weeks ago.
Well, I think you got to find, I think you're looking more for particular traits, and one of the biggest ones that I see right now, and the ones that good quarterbacks I've been around is, it's going to sound a little bit strange, but what's their nervous system like? What is it? What do they look like when things break down? How do they operate when the pocket is muddy? How do they operate under critical duress and critical pressure? Those are the things that I look at. And how does their brain essentially respond? How does their body respond to those stressors? I think a really good example of what incredible poise and calmness looks like is just you watch Jayden Daniels play.
First name that came to my mind when you said
the moment's never too big for him. Pressure never rattles him. He's efficient in his movement. He's efficient in his delivery. That's kind of what I mean by that. And look, Jayden is turning out to be what might be an incredibly rare prospect that, I would say probably, look, he was taken second overall. So like nobody missed on him. You know what I mean?
Right.
They knew he was a good player, but I'm just saying I think he's exceeded whatever expectations a lot of people maybe had of him. And it's been kind of cool to watch as a fan of quarterback play. But his poise is incredible. And that's what you have to have. And then you watch the great players in our league. And I mean, you look at Mahomes and Burrow and Allen and Lamar. I mean, you watch these guys play ball, Stafford. There's something about how they operate. And like I said, their nervous system is a huge part of that. And then there's three things that I always look at, and it's decision-making, timing, and accuracy. That's quarterback play in the NFL. And you have to be able to, when those moments come where you have to throw the football and everyone in the stadium knows you have to throw the football, can you do it? Can you make those throws in those big moments? And that's what separates, I think, all the quarterbacks in the league, the great ones from the guys that are just good. And that's what you look for, is how does their nervous system work under pressure, and can they make good decisions? Can they throw on time? And most importantly, are they accurate? And I think you see that in the quarterbacks that are all still playing right now. But that's how I look at the position, and I think those are the most important things you look for when you're looking at it.
Now, those were not exemplary traits of Will Levis's game last season. Those have never necessarily been the kind of traits that Will Levis has hanged his hat on in his football career. For him, it's been about the physical tools. And I think Titans fans are ready to sacrifice some of the physical stuff, the arm strength, the vertical at the combine, whatever it might be, for a quarterback that you feel better about from a processing standpoint. Now, when he brings up accuracy, a lot of Titans fans bring up accuracy, and they bring up Shedeur Sanders. And I actually caught wind of this just last week, Jackson. I didn't realize this. We talk a lot about Shedeur Sanders' completion percentage, and that's a complex stat. There's a lot that goes into that. I mean, we spoke last week with Jordan Reed of ESPN about the difference between ball placement and completion percentage. Those are two different ways to evaluate accuracy, but Shedeur Sanders has the highest career completion percentage of any quarterback in college football history. We've not talked about that at all. I was just kind of stunned to see that. 71.8% completion percentage, beating out Colt Brennan, the Hawaii legend, for highest career completion percentage in college football history. I was surprised. I mean, he had a really high mark in 2024, and that's obviously going back to his time at Jackson State. So that's a credit to Shedeur Sanders. But a big part of this process in regards to the rookies or these prospects is going to be about exactly that, the nervous system, and how you evaluate that is up to Mike Borgonzi and Brian Callahan. But it's clear that's the number one trait that you need your next starting quarterback to excel in. My thing with that and the argument against bringing in a rookie to be that guy in 2025 is that the Titans need a player that can just keep their head above the water this season on offense, right? Brian Callahan needs a quarterback that can just keep their head above water. I'm not confident that a rookie quarterback out of this class is going to be able to do that in 2025. They could have a solid career. They could be a capable NFL starting quarterback at some point. But more often than not, that doesn't happen right out of the gates. And this is not, as we know, a Joe Burrow kind of quarterback class in the NFL draft. So that is the position that I kind of get stuck in. Because for me, in 2025, understanding the Titans are not a contending team this season, they just need a stable situation. And a rookie quarterback is anything but a stable situation. It's a wild card.
Who do you suggest?
In the immediate future. Well, then you start to get into your bridge quarterback options, your veteran options.
Is Jameis Winston or Justin Fields or any of these other quarterbacks a stable option?
In an ideal situation, no. Because Justin Fields, bit of a wild card. We still don't have a good read on Justin Fields and who he is as a starting quarterback. What the Steelers decide to do at the quarterback position could tell us a lot about that.
That could be another big domino in the quarterback market.
Absolutely. I mean, I heard Will say this morning on the morning show. If the Steelers elect to keep Russell Wilson, I mean, we believe that they're going to keep one of those two guys. They're both free agents. If the Steelers elect to keep Russell Wilson and let Fields go, okay, something smells fishy there, right? If you're letting go of the young former first-round pick that helped you to a nice record to start the season, 4-2, Justin Fields is the starter for Pittsburgh before Russ came back healthy. If you're letting Fields go for the aging veteran that struggled at the back end of last year, big red flag.
And how long in your career can you be a developmental project? Because he's going into year 5.
Yeah. Yeah, you're ready to figure out some kind of answer on Justin Fields. So the options might not be aplenty for the Titans. They're probably not going to be. We talked about it with Stafford and Darnold. Yes, those could be one of the first dominoes of the quarterback carousel. They could also stay put. And then, who's the first domino? Maybe Derek Carr, if the Saints were to let him go. I think Derek Carr qualifies as a stable bridge quarterback. Every time we have this discussion, we have people in the F&M Bank chat, on Twitter, whoever, pressing us, say, okay, then who's going to play quarterback if it's not a number 1 overall drafted player? Derek Carr screams just stabilizing force there to me. Not take you to the playoffs, not Super Bowl contender, just someone that can keep your head above water.
Win 6 or 7 games.
As you address, the many needs on this roster. We'll see if they can swing it. They're not the only team that's in that type of situation. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in. Zach Lyons, who you will hear later on from 1 to 3 this afternoon with Blaine Bishop, is going to be in studio with us for some of these discussions. We'll do that coming up next on 104.5 The Zone.
The Tennessee Men's Clinic is an incredibly useful resource and has been helping guys for over a decade when they need ED treatment, because that can be a thing that, may come with some misconceptions around it. For example, you may get your own treatment. You may seek pills and take the pills for a period of time and see immediate results, but over time, that may wear off and you may be stuck with the same issue. If you're dealing with any of those problems or just generally want to understand more about how your body changes as you age, the Tennessee Men's Clinic is here to help you. They specialize in men's sexual health issues. It's all they do. It makes them the experts in the field, and they have access to multiple protocols and options to treat ED based on your specific needs and what's going on in your body. The Tennessee Men's Clinic protocols are patient-centered and customized to your needs. They have treatments for everything from low testosterone, ED, treatments that increase size, stamina, and everything else in between. So schedule an appointment online today at TennesseeMen'sClinic.com for their Franklin or Midtown location, or call them 615-208-9090.
Welcome back. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken, enjoying another day without Buck Rising. Sun always shines a little brighter, air's a little crisper, and Zach Lyons joins the party in studio. You can hear him on Cover 2 alongside Blaine Bishop from 1 to 3, although today it's with his F-Words pod partner, Stoney Keeley. Check that out on the Zone Podcast Network. Also a chili connoisseur, Zach Lyons. It was very nice what you did last week, bringing in about a dozen labeled Tupperwares for everybody, literally
and
labeled.
you ate, what is that, a fourth? Or no, a third. I think you ate a third.
Approximately a third of your award-winning chili.
Oh, two-time award-winning chili,
Now, you did cause some problems, though. I think there is still some workplace tension left over from the chili that you brought.
Do we know who who ate, or whose chili he ate yet?
Out of the break room.
Oh, yeah. What were you talking about?
Robert and I are just not on speaking terms still from our tussle over some of the chili. That,
gotcha.
Not everybody ate their labeled Tupperware of chili. So Robert and I had, came to blows a couple times, verbal blows at least, and we haven't spoken to each other. So it's something HR can figure out. But in terms of the break room chili that Robert ate, thinking it was the chili designated for him that you brought, no, there has not been anything to come of that because that chili's probably been in there for 2 months.
And I do want to specify that I did tell him numerous times that it was the studio fridge, not the station fridge, the studio fridge.
Yeah. Now, Buck believes that it was actually not chili that he ate, but something that started out as something else, and then over the course of multiple weeks and or months, amalgamated into something that kind of looks like chili.
Yeah, well, he kind of, the way he described it, it kind of sounded like minestrone. But maybe it was old spaghetti and the noodles just disintegrated and everything.
But he's still with us today, so that's good.
Yeah, still alive.
Are you operating under the assumption right now that Will Levis will not be the Titans quarterback in week 1 of the 2025 season?
Yeah, barring injury. I mean, I think, it's even a stretch to think that he'll even be here.
On the roster.
Because I do think that at some point you can find draft capital for him. I mean, you were able to trade Malik Willis after 2 terrible years and a pretty good preseason. Why couldn't you do the same with Will Levis? Now, whether you want to turn around and trade a second-round pick for a 7th or whatever, but there's going to be someone out there willing to take a chance on Will Levis because they all got that I can fix him mentality and stuff. Kind of like your ex-significant other always thinks that they can fix you, even though, you are who you are. And Will Levis is who he is. So I just don't think that in the end, I see a scenario where their hand could be forced and he could be here. But at the end of the day, I do think that he is not your starter week 1. If he is your starter week 1, terrible things have happened in some form or fashion for the Tennessee Titans.
Well, and Levis at every turn has spoken about wanting to stay and to compete and talking about, being given the chance to do so. But if you're Will Levis's representation, that's the end result you probably want too, right?
Yeah, and saying that stuff makes sense, right? Yeah. I mean, you don't want to be the guy like, trade me now, and, this place sucks, or, I'm not being utilized right, or it's not my fault, you kind of have to say those things. He's smart. He's very business-minded. We know that from his Peyton Manning passing camp, that it's all about the sponsorships and all that kind of stuff. The me brand for him, and part of that is playing the PR game, so he just played the PR game very well.
What is the number one quality then that you want out of the Titans starting quarterback in 2025?
Processing. So I guess you could call it the what did Brian Callahan call it?
The nervous system.
The nervous system. Yeah, it's kind of a catch-all, but like for me, it's that post-snap, once the ball snapped in your hand, processing what the defense is doing. I mean, Will Levis, I think we're even being generous saying this, but Will Levis was a half a second slower than everybody else on the field. And I need someone who can make a quick decision post-snap. There's a couple of quarterbacks where you go and watch their tape, because that was a problem with him coming out of Kentucky. So there's a couple of quarterbacks in this draft where you watch the tape and you see them post-snap, make quick decisions, be able to scan the field and all that kind of stuff, and make big-time NFL throws. Not every quarterback is NFL level in terms of their actual talent, but you see that there are options out there, not just in the draft, but also free agency, where you can improve how quick your play rolls on. Like, to me, Will Levis just slowed everything down. And even in a sense of something that Blaine has always talked about on Cover 2 is that you should look at your first read, and your first read's not there. Where's your escape hatch? Where's your dump off? And if you look at where his checkdowns were throughout the year, he was middle of the road in checkdowns. But you think of how many times he missed a check down, threw an interception, missed a check down, threw an incompletion, and kind of halted the momentum of the offense. So to me, I'm looking for someone that can scan the field. If his first read's out, does he have the field? Does he know where his escape hatch is? And can he get the ball over there?
So the company line has been patience over panic, right?
Right.
And obviously Brian Callahan going into year 2 after 3-14 in year 1. I believe that patience over panic permeates down to the coaching staff. I think it has to be an organizational thing, right? It can't just apply to the front office or the roster and not the coach, but there's a breaking point with everything. And if the Titans were to go 2-15 this season, I'd be shocked if Brian Callahan was retained for a third year. So that's where, when it comes to draft a rookie quarterback or bring in a bridge veteran stopgap, I worry about with the rookie QB discussion, because I feel like that breaking point will come a lot quicker with a rookie quarterback, and I don't think the beacon of hope of having a rookie quarterback would be enough for Brian Callahan to survive another 3-14 type of season.
Yeah, the only thing that's saving his season is wins. Now, you can make an argument that if you can't win with a rookie quarterback, what good are you? Like, right? Excuse me. I mean, there's plenty of teams that have shown they can at least look competitive, throughout the year, look competitive with the rookie quarterback, and it may not yield wins. You got to be you got to win, and in your losses, look competitive, look like a real NFL team. And this Titans team, the more you kind of think over the years, and this has been an issue not just with Brian Callahan's Tennessee Titans, but Mike Vrabel's Tennessee Titans, they're just all so slow. And like every player is slow to react. Every player is just like, doesn't feel like they know what they're doing sometimes. And it's because this team is devoid of talent. Now, you can supplement that with veterans that know how to play football. Like what I mean by that is like veterans that know their spot. Kenneth Murray, biggest issue was knowing his spots, knowing the angles to take and all that stuff. Now, he's super athletic, but you don't have to be the most athletic guy. So when I look at this team, even if you were to get a rookie quarterback, free agency is probably the most important thing for Brian Callahan's job security, because that's where you're going to find the bulk of your players. I think you have, close to 28 pending free agents. So you're going to have another big year of roster turnover, more than likely. And you got to upgrade lots of positions. You only have so many draft picks. So free agency is going to be super important. Not to say that you need a free agent quarterback, but at the end of the day, it's all about wins. I don't think whether you get a veteran or whether you get a rookie as your starting quarterback day one, it doesn't matter if you don't win for Brian Callahan. At the end of the day, you have to win.
Zach Lyons in studio, 615-737-1045. If you want to join the discussion with Zach, let's do that. Let's go to the phones and bring in Alvin, who wants to talk about the quarterback position. Hey, Alvin.
Hey, how you doing?
Great.
Oh.
What you got?
This is Alvin. I wanted to know what you think about drafting Shedeur Sanders, let him sit 67 games, let Will Levis play, and then just bring out the quarterback.
Thanks, Alvin.
What was that? I had a hard time
Shedeur
hearing.
Sanders, let Will Levis play, and develop Sanders was his proposition.
Oh, man. You need to have another veteran presence in there for Shedeur. You don't want him learning anything from Will Levis. At the end of the day, maybe Shedeur can actually teach him a thing or two about playing the quarterback position, because if you look at Shedeur Sanders, if you go back to what he did at Jacksonville State, is like that. Emory Hunt even said this today, but when you go and watch his freshman tape, he was playing at a senior level as a freshman. Like the stuff he was doing, the footwork, the throwing motion, the processing. Will Levis has nowhere in Will Levis's career by season has he looked as good as Shedeur Sanders did his freshman year. That's just a fact. Like, you guys got to go watch the tape. And so at the end of the day, I get the idea. I love his premise, though, because I'm like this for every quarterback in this draft class. I'd rather them kind of sit for a little bit. Doesn't mean now if they win in training camp, you obviously don't force them on the bench to sit. But if they win in training camp, let them play. But at the end of the day, I think every one of these quarterback prospects could benefit from sitting on the bench for some period of time.
I admittedly, when the season ended, my mind had this chain reaction. Number 1 pick, massive need at quarterback, you take a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
But since then, every bone in my body has moved away from that. Every fiber of my brain has moved away from that to trade back. The idea of trading back to 3, Zach, and still potentially getting the best player in the draft, whether it's Hunter or Carter, is so enticing to me. And getting the best player in this draft and still getting more draft capital down that path. But the one thing I will say about both of these quarterbacks, they did, every time the level of competition went up, they did meet it. Right? I mean, Sanders went from Jackson State to Colorado and only continued to improve. With Ward, we all know the path. Incarnate Word to Washington and Miami, and all he did was get better, and he had the best season of his career in the final year of his career. With Levis, you mentioned his career at Kentucky, there was obviously a regression, right? It's why you're so wary of Jalen Milroe. There was an obvious regression in his last year of college. So that is an encouraging thing. As much as I am draft capital, continue to stockpile this roster. It's tough to imagine a rookie quarterback kind of keeping this offense's head above water. But that is one thing you have to give both of these players, is that all they did was kind of sort of meet the moment throughout their career.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I kind of look at it as it's hard to never not want to trade back. Think about the last few drafts, at least I've covered since like 2017. I'm pretty much always end up being team trade back. And that's like it's just because I get enamored with the idea of if you have more draft picks, you have more options to miss. So you have more leeway to miss. With the Tennessee Titans, they haven't had that opportunity to miss a lot. And you go back to 2021, 2022, and 2023, 2020, 2021, 2022 drafts. You know, those 3 drafts for the Tennessee Titans under John Robinson, his last 3 drafts, they had 11 top 100 picks. What did this team want in over 3 years? 12. This new regime. They had 11. The problem is that they sucked with all 11, and that's why John Robinson's fired. It's not the A.J. Brown trade. I mean, in a vacuum, that is not the reason why. It's because he was not a good GM at any of the things that you're supposed to be good at, right?
In the back half.
Free agency, you're supposed to be good at free agency signing, handling your own contracts in-house, the draft, and all that stuff. And he wasn't. And those last 3 seasons. So I look at it like this. It's hard. I'm with you. It's hard not to want to trade back. And if they do not have conviction by the time this process nears the draft, you should trade back. You're going to have a trade partner more than likely with some kind of offer. Now, if that offer, I don't even care if it's fair value, don't take it. You gotta hold out for a future first round pick in this year's draft. And a swap and all that kind of stuff. You got to hold out. Like that Jordan, what's his name? Jordan Rannon that covered or whatever that was getting some traction this morning. Like that's a bull crap trade. Throw that out there. I wouldn't entertain
I'll
that.
pull it up. What was it? It was, I believe it was obviously the pick swap with the Giants, where Giants go to 1, Titans go to 3, and then 2 third-round picks.
Yeah.
On top of that.
Yeah, so I look at it like this, is that's not enough. And you should just stick and pick at that point. So I look at it like this in the sense of I would rather, I definitely am with you. Trade back to 3 seems like the prime spot. And I do think that there is a scenario where even if you miss out on either Abdul or Travis Hunter because of the Browns, then you still get one of the quarterbacks and maybe you like both quarterbacks. If you like all 4 players, but you don't love any of the 4 players, you should trade back.
With that said, what is the furthest back you'd be okay with in a Titans trade scenario? Like, what's the furthest back you think you can go in this draft while still acquiring a game-changing player with your first pick?
Okay, well, that is
maybe they're 2 separate answers.
So I think there is 2 separate answers. So the game changer, I think, ends at like 6 or 7. But I'm willing to trade back further because the further you trade back, the more picks and more draft capital you'll pick up in a trade, right? The more value you get. And while I do think that the game-changing talent is like the first 10 picks, if you trade back to 15, you're getting a lot in return, and more than likely a lot in return in this draft. Yeah, you may be missing out on one of the blue chip players, but in my mind, I kind of look at it like, but you're going to be picking up so much depth. And this team, I know it needs game changers and all that kind of stuff. I fully understand. But that may not happen in this draft. And if you're picking up not only draft capital in this draft, but future drafts, you have more options later down the road to maybe find game changers. But at least you're improving your depth and you're also getting young at the same time.
And last time Titans went from number 1 to number 15, it worked out okay.
Yeah.
615-737-1045. Brian up next. Hey, Brian.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking the call.
What you got?
Yeah. So my issue with over the last few years is really boiled down to, in my opinion, is Amy, and it hasn't really been as much of the front office because John Robinson didn't hit on a lot of his blue chip picks, but he had pretty good picks on the back end. Let him go. We didn't let Rand really flesh anything out. We bring in Callahan, and he's supposed to be this quarterback guru, but Levis looked the worst out of any coach he's been under Callahan. So I'm wondering, the next move, what do we do? We got to get. It seemed to me we got to get somebody that's a veteran that can handle Callahan's offense in there to teach somebody, and then get a decent enough draft pick that's got the intelligence to learn the offense and give them a few years to learn it.
Thanks for the call, Brian.
I get some of his points. I don't agree with all of them. John Robinson was terrible the last 3 days. There's just no way to say
I think
it.
when he says on the back end, I think he's meaning more on J-Rob's picks on days 2 and 3 of the draft.
Yeah, they're terrible. Like, are we going to call Des Fitzpatrick, Rashad Weaver, Racey McMath, and Brady Breeze the back end of the draft?
That was kind of the start of
that was 2020
down slope. Yeah.
So like that's what I'm saying. Then you get day 3 is like NPF, Kyle Phillips, Chance Campbell. Like, guys, it wasn't good in any of the draft, any part of the drafts. Those last 3 drafts. Now, I understand that, he found David Long in 2019, Amani Hooker in 2019. But, after 2019, it was over for this team. And so, I'm not surprised that he got fired. Rand Carthon, a big Rand Carthon defender, have been for a while. But the more you kind of start looking back and piecing together certain things and you're hearing stuff on the back end, it was probably the right move to move on from Rand Carthon. But again, at the same time, I'd still prefer to fire both if you're going to fire one. Speaking of Brian Callahan. And later today, we're going to talk about Brian Callahan's scheme on Cover 2 with Stoney. He's got like a notebook this big on Brian Callahan's scheme. So we're going to be talking about how it's not as bad as people think it is. But I do understand what he wants from a quarterback, which is the intelligence. And I do think Shedeur and Cam Ward have that intelligence as rookies to be able to grasp this playbook and this scheme and make it work. And I do think that is a credit to Brian Callahan for being able to work with not just vets, but also this. I will push back. He has never called himself, and nor has anyone outside of Nashville ever called him a quarterback guru or quarterback whisperer. That came straight from 2 articles that were written after he was hired by local reporters. So please stop calling him that.
Well, but there's no question that, you bring him in with the quarterback position in mind.
Well, you bring in any offensive-minded head coach with the quarterback in mind. The problem is that these coaches, when they take the job, don't get to talk to the quarterback beforehand.
Sure.
And so nobody knew really that Will Levis was as messed up as what he was. Yeah. Because if you remember, you had Derrick Henry, and they constantly took the ball out of Will Levis's hands when he started doing the stuff. And Derrick Henry, as we have seen, doesn't matter where he's at, he's going to produce. So that's a lot easier to be able to mitigate in those situations.
Zach Lyons and Stoney Keeley coming up from 1 to 3 right here on The Zone. New Efforts pod on Wednesday as well?
Thursday.
Okay. So this is not the F Words pod. You're not just packaging this and turning it into the F Words pod.
We can't cuss.
I respect to the that's the big part of it. You have to be able to cuss. Yeah. What am I saying? Thursday night, new F Words pod, Cover 2 later from 1 to 3. Thanks, man. Appreciate you coming through.
No problem.
And thanks for that chili.
Yeah, no problem.
Zach Lyons with us on The Zone. We'll wrap up the show. Final call for phone call, 615-737-1045, and we'll do the polls coming up next. Wrapping up the show, Cover 3 coming up next. Zach Lyons and Stoney Keeley. Stoney filling in.
Cover 2.
For Cover 2, what am I saying? And Cover 3 when you're in there, I guess. Cover 2. From 1 to 3. With Zach Lyons and Stoney Keeley, who you can also hear together on F Words Pod later this week. Stoney filling in for Blaine today. I'm Lucas Panzica. Appreciate you guys hanging out today. Last call for phone calls before we do the poll, 615-737-1045. Quick news before we play a game that Jackson wants to play here. Mike Organ of the Tennessean with a report. Now, he is citing a report by the Sports Business Journal that says Cleveland, not the Tennessee Summit, is likely to receive a WNBA team in 2028. So Cleveland expected to receive the next WNBA franchise when the league expands to 16 teams for the 2028 season. So the Tennessee Summit will have to wait to see if their bid can come to fruition. Of course, that news a couple weeks ago, an ownership group led by Bill Haslam, along with Candace Parker, Peyton Manning, Tim McGraw, and Faith Hill. But they could further down the road. There is a report from the Sports Business Journal that lists Houston, Philly, Nashville, Detroit, and Miami as leaders for additional WNBA franchises that would likely be awarded in 2029 or 2030. So the next available timeline seems to have been pushed down the line a little bit, but the Tennessee Summit will continue. Tyler from the F&M Bank chat is booing this news. So unfortunate, but they did come in a little bit late in the game. Cleveland, there had been news about Cleveland pursuing a WNBA bid for quite some time. So not dead. Hopefully there is still a WNBA team in Nashville within the next 5 or 6 years. All right, so what do you want to do here, Jackson?
So if you haven't noticed the break screen, this has been the Spelling Bee Champ Show. You posted on Twitter on Sunday telling me and Buck to eat it because you were the 8th grade spelling bee, correct?
That's correct. Our Lady of the Valley Middle School in Birmingham, Alabama. I have documentation of my spelling bee ring. I didn't get a ring. I wish I did.
Let's test that spelling acumen that has never shown up on this show before. I figured I'd like to see it for once.
That's not true at all. I've won almost every. You had to spell ayahuasca, and Buck tried to put an I in there somewhere, and I had it correct. So that's incorrect. But okay, continue.
No, you were the one who put the I in.
That's not true.
So I wanted to see if your spelling acumen has changed since the 8th grade. So I'm going to give you some 2025 NFL draft prospects, and you're going to have to spell them. Jackson, hit the game show music.
Okay. This seems like a disadvantageous position for me. These are names, not words out of the dictionary, but I'll allow it.
All right, let's start off easy. Ashton Jeanty.
Jeanty. We're just going last name, right?
Sure.
I don't need to spell Ashton. Jeanty. Jeanty. Jeanty.
Correct. All right, now let's get up into the little bit harder range. Let's go with Terosha McMillan.
How did you just say that man's first name?
I didn't pronounce it right.
Terosha. What do you want me to spell here?
The first name.
First name. Okay. Now, admittedly, I have not nailed down the pronunciation of his first name, but I know it's not Terosha. I've been calling him T-Mac.
T-Mac.
Throughout this process. Or Tet. That's a nickname as well. Okay.
Tetaroya. That's what it is.
Okay. Tetaroya. Tetaroya. Tetaroya.
Correct.
What?
Yeah, you got that right. All right, that was one of my harder ones. So
look, he's scrambling now. now I'm too confident.
Nick Amenwan.
Excuse me?
Amenwan? The safety from South Carolina?
Oh.
30th ranked prospect on ESPN's big board?
I'm assuming because of the way you butchered the pronunciation the first time that there is a silent N at the beginning of his name.
No.
Okay, I give up on this one.
It is Emmanwori. Emanwori. That's my fault. I couldn't read it.
All right. Well, can we get the pronunciations down? You couldn't have prepared the pronunciations before. You had an N at the beginning of the name.
I did not.
Yes, you did.
No, okay. I said M.
Next one.
Omarion Hampton. First name.
Omarion. Omarion. Omarion.
Correct. All right. I'm calling it here. Wonderful job by you. You are still the reigning spelling bee champion of, what's the school name again?
Our Lady of the Valley Middle School, 2009.
All right, Our Lady of the Valley Middle School, proud today as you are the champion.
And champion of this show as well. Let the record show the only ones I got wrong were because you butchered the pronunciations, okay? I want that to be clear.
When you got Tetaroya, that kind of threw a wrench in my plans.
Let's do some polls. Quickly, before Jackson gets into the polls, the AP poll is out. Tennessee dropping one spot after going 1-1 last week. Vols are the number 6 team in the country. Auburn, number 1 for the 6th straight week. Florida, number 2. Duke, number 3. Alabama dropping 2 spots to 4. Houston at 5, jumping Tennessee.
All right, these are the polls. They're presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. What is the number one quality you want in the next Titans quarterback? Alec says NFL talent.
NFL talent would be good. Both of these quarterbacks certainly have that. Enough to be a starting caliber player in year one, I don't know. But yes, they would not be in discussion for the number 1 overall pick if they did not possess NFL talent.
Did you watch the NBA All-Star Game? 92% say no. Although Dalton Knecht in the semifinals of this round-robin tournament, 8 points.
What even was the format? I mean,
it was 4 teams, including the Rising Stars team. So, like, you had, like, Dalton Knecht and Zach Edey going up against, like, Victor Wembanyama and LeBron. So, tough scene there.
It seems disadvantageous. I feel like the NBA All-Star format has just incrementally decreased in terms of excitability and watchability over the years. Mac McClung just won the dunk contest for the 3rd year in a row. Has he ever played an NBA minute? I mean, the guy can dunk the basketball. It's exciting. Has he? Okay, but he's a G League player, yes?
Yes.
And then meanwhile, the NHL makes one of the best All-Star Week pivots we have seen in American sports with the Four Nations face-off, which the U.S. defeated Canada in on Saturday in an electric environment. So, yeah, tough weekend for the NBA.
Yeah, I think I would have definitely watched it had the Four Nations and SNL 50 not been on.
Yeah.
Just a better product. What should the Vikings do at quarterback? 46% say roll with J.J. McCarthy. 38% say franchise tag Darnold. 11% say give Darnold the new contract. 5% find another solution.
Yeah, the majority of votes going to roll with J.J. McCarthy. I just think that's a massive risk. I get if you're the Vikings and you believe that Darnold hit his ceiling, and the Vikings would have a better answer on that than any of us, but I don't know. Guy just led you to 14 wins. You haven't done that since the late 90s.
Which word better describes how you feel about Tennessee Vols hoops after the win over Vanderbilt? 68% going confused, 32% are confident.
Confused is a good answer with the way Tennessee has played over the last couple weeks, but that second half team, that's a team that can make a run. That first half team, not so much. Which one will we get over the course of the last few weeks of the season? Remains to be seen. No midweek game for number 6 Tennessee this week. That'll do it for us on this President's Day Monday. Appreciate everybody hanging out. Buck will be back tomorrow, much to all of our chagrin. Zach and Stoney Keeley coming up next. It's Cover 2 on 104.5 The Zone. See you tomorrow.